So this PowerPoint looks at part of chapter 4, which is on consciousness on the version of sleep. So let's look at what consciousness means. It's our awareness of internal and external stimuli. So an example of internal stimuli would be hunger, the feeling of hunger, and external stimuli would be the sunshine and how that affects us. So wakefulness versus sleep, that's pretty obvious, but we'll look at the definitions anyway. Wakefulness is a state of consciousness characterized by high levels of sensory awareness, thought, and behavior. Obviously, when we're awake, we're very much aware of what's around us, what we're thinking, and how we're behaving. Sleep, however, is a state of consciousness marked by relatively low levels of physical activity and reduced sensory awareness. When we're asleep, we're obviously not very physically active and we don't know as much about what's around us. So let's look a little further at sleep. Biological rhythms refer to the natural cycles or patterns that occur in various physiological processes within living organisms. So those rhythms could be daily, monthly, or yearly and are regulated by an internal biological clock. As you probably guessed, sleep is a daily process, and that is referred to as the circadian rhythm. It's linked to the light-dark process in our environment. In other words, obviously we sleep when it's dark and we're usually awake when it's light. And that is possible due to the SCN, or suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain, which receives direct input from the retina, which is in the eye, via the optic chiasm. And the optic chiasm is the part of the brain where the optic nerves cross. The sleep-wake cycle, however, is controlled by other parts of the brain than the SCN. For example, the pons. The pons is part of the brain stem that helps send signals to relax muscles essential for body posture and limb movements so that we don't act out our dreams. The pons actually plays a special role in REM sleep, which we'll discuss soon what REM sleep is. So let's look a little bit at the pineal and pituitary glands. They also play a big part in sleep. The pineal gland, you can see in the diagram, is responsible for the production of the hormone melatonin. I think we've all probably heard of melatonin. It's not only a natural hormone that our body produces, but often people take melatonin to help them sleep. The pituitary gland, which you can also see in the picture, also releases hormones that are important for sleep. So all those things work together to help us sleep. So why do we sleep? Now we know kind of what makes us sleep, but why do we sleep? Some ideas are that sleep is essential to restore resources that are expended during the day. Our sleep patterns evolved as an adaptive response to predatory risks, which increase in darkness. If you remember from another PowerPoint, the concept of natural selection, in that those who are most able to adapt to their environment are more likely to survive and reproduce. So sleep is a way of adapting to our environment. Sleep is important, obviously, for cognitive function and memory formation. We primarily know this because lack of sleep disrupts our ability to think and retrieve memories. We don't think as well when we've had lack of sleep. What are the stages of sleep? Earlier in the PowerPoint, I said we'd look at REM sleep and what that is, but let's look at non-rapid eye movement, or NREM sleep. It has 3 stages. Stage 1 is a transitional phase that occurs between wakefulness and sleep, kind of like the period known as when we drift off to sleep. Involves a marked decrease in both overall muscle tension, your body calms down, and core body temperature, your body cools down. Stage 2 would be when the body goes into a state of deep relaxation. And stage 3 is often referred to as deep sleep. During this time, an individual's heart rate and respiration slow dramatically, and it is much more difficult to awaken someone from sleep during this time. Let's look at REM sleep. That's the period of sleep in which dreaming occurs. It's also associated with paralysis of muscle systems in the body, with the exception of those that make circulation and respiration possible. Obviously, we wouldn't want to lose the ability for our blood to circulate and to breathe, but everything else sort of becomes still during that period. As it says, therefore, no movement of voluntary muscles occurs during REM sleep. And that's a quick review of the process of sleep, why we sleep, and kind of how that process works. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. Thanks so much.